Hello everybody and welcome back to my little channel. If you're new to this channel, my name's Amanda. I'm a diagnosed autistic adult. I make videos about autism in adulthood. Obviously I'm an autistic adult, and all the signs and symptoms of autism, and hopefully my videos will help somebody out there to give you some support and advice along the way. In today's little video, I want to talk about autism and empathy because it's a common misconception that autistic people, especially autistic adults in the workplace, we don't feel empathy. And I worked in the National Health Service. That's the biggest health service, government funded health service in the United Kingdom for nearly 20 years. And when I was diagnosed with autism, I went through this period of burnout from masking all my life, and when my mask finally dropped and I was just exhausted and I could no longer laugh at people's jokes or mingle in team meetings or in my dinner break, I used to sit on my own, for example, the managers and the staff used to ask me why I'm not feeling empathy. Or one of the questions I got asked was, well, you used to feel empathy, you used to understand, why has that changed? And it's because I was going through burnout and I'd been masking all my life. And a lot of things that you read on Google, a lot of media and everything like that, it tells us that autistic people, we don't feel empathy, which really annoys me to some extent, because let me tell you 100% that I do feel empathy. I do feel happiness and I do feel sadness. It's just that it might come across that I'm not feeling it because I don't know how to respond to those emotions. So it might come across that I've got a straight face, or it might come across that I'm not caring, or that I'm not crying in a situation where I should be crying, or I'm not laughing in a situation where I'm supposed to be laughing. And people commonly assume that she's autistic, so she doesn't feel those feelings. And actually, I'm here to tell you that I absolutely do. So before we continue with this video, I want to just explain a little bit about what autism is for those people that are new to this channel and are just tuning in. Now, I know I keep explaining it, but we might have those new viewers or potential people that potentially think they've got autism, or employers that are wanting to learn more about autism. And so autism is a genetic condition. It's passed on through one of your immediate members of family. We think that my dad is also autistic, and so we think that I've got my autism from my dad, which is why we get on so incredibly well together, because we understand each other. It's a genetic condition. It's a neurodevelopmental condition, which means that it affects the way we see the world, we hear the world, we feel the world, we interact with the world and interpret the world in general. And so it encompasses our entire lives, and it affects every single aspect of our lives, from the moment we get up in the morning to the moment we go to bed at night time, from what food we eat to being around crowds of people in supermarkets, from where we work at and how much work's given to us, from communication, verbal, written, telephone communication. A lot of us won't answer the phone, for example. It affects everything. And although a lot of us as autistic adults, myself included, are really good at acting and masking, that is hiding our symptoms from the neurotypical world, from our neurotypical peers, it still affects us exactly the same as somebody that doesn't mask. And so autism is a spectrum. That means that it affects us all differently. You've probably heard the saying, if you've met one person with autism, you've just met one. Every single person with autism, we see, hear, feel and interpret the world differently to each other, to our autistic peer, to our autistic friend. And so it affects us completely differently. And so we all have our own quirks and we all have our own little personalities, and that goes for everybody on the planet, and that goes for every autistic person. So don't assume that we're all exactly the same, because we're all different. And a common misconception, and one that I hear so often on Google and on YouTube videos and from friends and family, is that autistic people don't feel emotion, or we don't have spatial awareness, or we lack capacity, and all these sort of things. And actually that is so far from the truth. It's untrue, because I really feel emotion. A lot of autistic people, we have extremes of emotion. So we can either feel, when we feel upset, we can feel extremely down, and when we feel happy, we can feel elated. And I explain it to my dad and to people around me like this roller coaster of emotion. I feel often like I'm on this roller coaster of life, this peak of happiness and this down of depression. And so when people say autistic people, we don't feel emotion, it really does annoy me to some extent, because actually they're incredibly wrong. And just because I'm not able to identify how to feel those feelings and respond to them like my neurotypical peers, it really doesn't mean to say that they don't exist. A lot of us as autistic people, although we feel these extremes of emotion, this extreme of happiness, this extreme of sadness, so when we feel down, we really do feel down. And you'll see a lot of people posting on Facebook and YouTube videos and things that they feel depressed and misunderstood and low. A lot of the time we can come across as being absolutely fine to doctors and nurses and friends and family, and that in many ways can be really dangerous, because it can hide our true intentions and our true feelings, and that can be devastating for our long-term and short-term mental health and well-being, and it can lead to unfortunate outcomes for us as autistic people, because we can be misunderstood. But a lot of the time we hide those feelings, but we feel them so immensely. It's just that for some reason we can't seem to explain to people, or find the words to explain to people just how we're feeling in that situation. Although we feel the feelings and we feel them so strongly, trying to find the words to describe those emotions can be really, really difficult. And sometimes it can feel like our mind just goes mute and our brain just switches off, and sometimes we just can't find the words at all, and so we might just go silent and not say anything. And let's not forget the occasions where autistic adults will tell our friends and family and peers, or doctors and nurses, that yes, I'm feeling fine, even when maybe we might be feeling incredibly low. And a lot of us as autistic people, sometimes it can take much longer for us to process our thoughts, feelings and emotions, and we can have delays in communication. So what affects our neurotypical peers immediately, say for example there's been a death in the family. That happened to me recently. My cousin passed away. He was suspected autistic, which is another reason why I'm making these videos as well. He went his entire life with problems without support, and it sort of pushed me and motivated me to make these videos to help other people, because I don't want to lose another potentially autistic person to the feelings of anxiety and depression. So hopefully if you're feeling like that, you can relate to some of the information that I'm sharing with my videos and know that you're not on your own. But we as autistic people, it can take us much longer to process our feelings. So if something's happened that everybody else is responding to with grief, for example, or with upset or hurt as their emotion, as their first immediate primary emotion, it can take us longer to process that. So although it can come across to other people that we are devoid of emotion, or we're not showing any empathy, or we're not crying when we're supposed to be crying, or showing grief when we're supposed to be showing grief. Sometimes we can hold on to that emotion and take it home, and we can ruminate in that feeling, and rumination means going over it and over it in our minds, and then we can lose sleep because we're worrying about those feelings. And we can hold on to those feelings for a long time, sometimes months, years, sometimes decades. Whereas other people tend to grieve, and they go through a standard grieving process in psychology of acceptance and denial and all that. And then they move on. Autistic people, we don't tend to respond the same way as our neurotypical peers. And so although it can come across that we're not responding with that emotion and we're emotionless, that is absolutely not the case. We're feeling the emotion greatly. Actually, we're feeling it probably more than our neurotypical peers. We're holding on to it, and it can have long-lasting, devastating negative effects on our mental health. And so, of course, if we're not dealing with that emotion the same as our neurotypical peers, it can have devastating long-term effects on our mental health, and it can lead to depression, or it can lead to feelings of depression later on when we're processing that information. And I know with my cousin, for example, when he passed, I cry and cry and cry still to this day, even when, my family's never going to move on from anything like that, but even though they can deal with their emotion maybe a little bit better, I'm still processing that a year and a half to 2 years later. And so we can really hold on to these emotions, and it can really have long-lasting effects in comparison to neurotypical people. And so when people say to me, you don't feel emotion, for example, I didn't cry when he passed away because my ability to interpret what was happening and my ability to respond and understand the way I was feeling was delayed in comparison to my family that don't have autism. We can be really misunderstood as a result, because we can have these long-lasting effects, but it can come across in that moment to other people like we just don't care. And so that can be so damaging to us, because people see us as being this sociopath, or I've read so much media, so much online, and heard so many comments that it's almost like a sociopathic or an antisocial behaviour, when it's just naturally being so misunderstood by other people. Autism is so far from sociopathy, it's untrue. If anything, we feel so much, we feel our emotions incredibly in comparison to everybody else. And so that can be really damaging when people sort of tell us that we're almost like sociopaths just because we're misunderstood and they don't understand how we respond to our emotions. So to summarise, autistic people, we do feel emotion, and we can feel emotion much more than our neurotypical peers. It might be that we just don't know how to respond to those emotions, or it can just take us a little bit longer to analyse those feelings and put them into words to describe them to other people. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you can relate, leave a comment below. Please consider hitting like, commenting and subscribing, and I shall see you on the next vlog. Bye!